so much of what we talk about with the Bengals does focus on those skill position players and Joe Burrow in particular. A couple of different numbers on him that are worth talking about. A lot of different numbers, to be quite honest. He's the favorite, 2-1, or right there behind Aaron Rodgers at 2-1 for comeback player of the year. He's also lined pretty well on MVP at 10-1. He's 12-1 or thereabouts for most passing yards in the league. Right around the same number for most passing touchdowns in the league. Passing yards, right up against 4,000, basically. 3,950 and a hook. Touchdowns, 27 and a half. Certainly everyone is expecting Joe Burrow to bounce back and be what he has been at the peak of his powers. And I see no reason for that not to happen, right? Like, short of injury, there's no reason he doesn't look like the guy who went to a Super Bowl a couple years ago.
Yeah, he's still one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. I think just we didn't get to see him a ton last year or even the year before. He was injured a little bit. So maybe just the talk around Joe Burrow has been lessened heading into this season, but he's still a premier quarterback. And I think as long as he is healthy, he should be able to surpass that passing yard total over. I mean, he was pretty much on track for a 4,000 yard season last year. He had over 4,400 yards in 2021 and 2022. So if he's healthy and available, he's good to go. So he also, a podcast he was on, Pardon My Take, on Barstool a couple weeks ago, and told them that, like, he has finally realized he's grown up and matured a little bit in his career, that he realizes his availability is his best ability, that whole saying, because he's prioritizing his health more and not. Before, he said he would just kind of push things to the limit, and he wanted to be in every practice, and he wanted to show, everyone that how tough he was, but he's realizing that he can take a step back. Maybe this preseason, he doesn't go as hard, doesn't go as many snaps, and remains healthy, because when he's been struggling with injuries, first half of the season last year, or first 4 games, they were 1-3, and Burrow was dead last in yards per attempt in the entire league last year. So this just goes to show, when he isn't healthy, he really struggles, but when he's healthy, the sky's the limit for Joe Burrow.
Yeah, and that's why I'm fully behind some of these numbers. Like 27 and a half touchdowns. This is a guy who went well over 30 in the 2 years where he was healthy, 34 and 35, respectively, in 2021 and 2022. 27 and a half is kind of like, if you were to project out what he was doing last year through a full season, without any improvement down the stretch, had he been healthy, it comes out to right about that number. Same with his passing yards. They're basically taking last year and projecting it forward into this year based on what he had done before getting hurt. But that, I think, belies the point that you just made, which is he's been a slow starter. He's been a guy who maybe has pushed himself a little bit too much, or maybe hasn't gotten enough work at times in the preseason. I know you can go one extreme end of the spectrum or the other. And if he's smarter about it now in his 5th season in the NFL, then you have to believe he's going to come into the season more prepared than ever before. And the other part of this is the schedule, which we'll get to in a little bit. But as it sets up, like, I foresee a strong start for Joe Burrow, and that's why I think I like the overs on the props. MVP's 9-1 as well. It's not a great number. Tied with Josh Allen right now on the board at BetMGM, behind only Patrick Mahomes. But that's something. I don't think you're going to get any better numbers in some of the award markets on Joe Burrow, because I do think they're going to start well. He's going to start well, and the numbers are only going to get shorter from there. 10.5 wins, Kate, but it's really heavily juiced to the over on the Cincinnati Bengals, like to the tune of minus 140-ish, depending where you shop. Plus money on the under at 10.5 wins. And so I look at it, and I look at how soft this schedule is. I mentioned it already. They are favored, of their 17 games, they are favored in 14. They are dogs in just 3, and only more than 3-point dog in one spot, and that's week 2 at the Chiefs in Kansas City at Burrowhead Stadium. of the 14 games they are favored in, 9 of them they are favored by more than a field goal, and 4 of those come in the first 6 weeks, and another 4 come in the last 6 weeks. So they've got sort of the perfect bookends to their schedule. If you can look past the Chiefs game on the road in week 2, and maybe having 2 games against the Steelers in the final 6 weeks, and Cleveland on a Thursday night, but that's at home even in week 16. This schedule looks really good for Cincinnati to do some damage to the point where I'm looking at least 12. And if everyone stays healthy, you can go over 12.5 at plus 250 right now.
That's the way to go, Chris. Because last year, 9 wins and Joe Burrow only played half the season. So if Joe Burrow's healthy, they're winning a ton of games. So don't just take the juice 10.5. Go with an alt of 12, 13. I mean, that's a lot, but I certainly think that you can, if you're Burrow being there the entire season, the Bengals are going to have a ton of success. You mentioned how many times they're favored this season. Favored by 6.5 in 3 of their first 4. The only one they're not favored in is against the Chiefs. And since 2001, the Bengals are 7-3 in games when they're favored by at least 6. And they've won and covered their last 5 straight when favored by at least 6. So that's a great little trend right there that's in favor of the Bengals having a ton of success early. You look down to week 5 against Baltimore. That's a tough game, like a division matchup, but the Ravens are coming off of playing at Dallas and then the Bills the next week. So those are 2 massive games for Baltimore before they face the Bengals. That's a tough stretch for the Ravens. So I think that's certainly a doable game for Cincinnati. It's at home, so that's obviously a plus for Cincinnati as well. My concern is against the Browns because Burrow is just 1-5 in his career against Cleveland. For whatever reason, he cannot beat the Browns. So that's like, let's go ahead and split that series. 1 win, 1 loss throughout. But otherwise, week 14 against the Cowboys, that's a Monday Night Football game. The Cowboys are coming off of like a little mini bye because they play Thursday Night Football the week before. So I think that could be a really tough one for the Bengals. And then again, week 16, Cleveland, that one's at home a Thursday night, but the Browns are coming off of playing the Chiefs. So 2 really tough games for the Browns back to back. So that could be a win there for the Bengals. I think you go over an alt line. Go, the regular line's 10.5. Take it 11, 12 games. Get some really good plus money there. As long as Burrow's healthy, this team's going to be great.
Yeah, you can get some really good numbers too. If we really want to, let's take this out to the, far extreme positives for the Bengals. You can get them to be the number 1 seed in the AFC at 6-1. You can get them for the best record in the league at 10-1. So, like, I don't know if I'd go best record in the league because the NFC is so soft. And, let's say San Francisco, especially against those divisional opponents, has a quality season. I could see the Niners getting to 13, 14 wins, something crazy if everything goes well. But between the softness of the schedule, their ability to go, I think, at least 4-2 in the division, maybe 5-1. You stack up all the non-division games that they have against really weak opponents. They've got the ability to win 13, again, maybe even 14 games. I think they're battling with Kansas City, I think, for the number 1 seed in the AFC late in the season. And because of the way the schedule stacks up, it stacks up better for Cincy. So, we've seen this play out before. As James Rapine of Locked On Bengals mentioned, they've never had a bye. They've never had a bye in this era. Literally in his lifetime. So, there is still that goal out there of, hey, we've never been the ones to go into the AFC playoffs knowing that everything comes through Paul Brown Stadium, knowing that everybody's got to come to us. There is something to be said for that goal still being out there for the Bengals. And so with that being said, 6-1 is the number 1 seed. It's not it's not the perfect price, but it's a price that I still like for this team, given all the positives we're talking about.